taxi pulled up to the old 9-story building. After 2 minutes, a girl in black clothes got out of the car. It was Helen. She just buried her mother. And now she was back in the empty house. Completely lost in her dark thoughts, the girl went into the entrance, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and unlocked the apartment. Her mother's coat and favorite bag were hanging on a hanger. Next to it were the boots she'd bought a few days ago. Helen held back herself the entire funeral procession so as not to burst into tears in front of strangers. When she finally got home, she let her emotions run wild. All evening the girl mourned her mother and her loneliness until at last she fell into an uneasy sleep. When Helen woke up in the morning, she thought about how to live her life. Besides her mother, she had no one in the whole world. For 10 years after her father's death, she and her mother lived alone. It was a difficult time for both of them. The fact is that Mary, Helen's mother, had no education and almost no work experience. She was a housewife and arranged family life, and the family was provided by her husband. But having been widowed early, she had to start from beginning and work in low-paid positions. She got a job at the factory and took on any part-time jobs. She had one goal: provide your only daughter with an excellent education, so that her daughter would never repeat her mistakes. But she didn't make it. Helen's mother could not make any savings. All the extra money, of which there was not much, went to tutors. So after her mother died, the girl faced the problem of where to get money for food and utilities. The only way out was to get a job. After writing an application to the dean's office for a sabbatical, Helen went to the group and said goodbye to her classmates. "I hope this is the right decision to take an academic sabbatical," said her friend Masha. "I hope this is the right decision to take an academic sabbatical," said her friend Masha. "I hope, so I will go to work now. To be honest, I am terrified and sad." Helen remembered her mother again and almost burst into tears. Her friend sensed this and turned the conversation around. "Listen, my boyfriend works part-time as a security guard at a restaurant on the avenue. The other day, he offered me a job as a waitress. There they have someone quit now, so they are looking for a replacement. I turned it down. But why don't you try it? You're pretty and smart. I think they pay well there." Helen looked at her friend with gratitude and hope. And she agreed. The friend's boyfriend agreed with the director, and a day later Helen came for an interview. It was morning, and the restaurant wasn't open yet. Passing through the empty hall, the girl was struck by the beautiful interior, expensive furniture. It was something she'd only seen in movies. The last time she went to the cafe, she was still with her dad. In the owner's chair sat a tall, thin woman in her 40s. In an expensive suit and with a perfect hairstyle. Her name was Marianne. She gave Helen an unfriendly, prickly look. She asked about her previous job and experience. Lack of experience and young age were downsides, but beauty and a great desire to work were a plus. As a result, she was put on probation. "Tomorrow is your first day of work. At first, the girls will tell and show you everything. Well, then there are no exceptions. Work requires responsibility, accuracy, and politeness with customers. If something goes wrong, we will part with you without regret," the woman said sternly at the end. Helen was thrilled that the circumstances were so good for her. Even before she actually started looking for a job, she already got a job in a cool restaurant. And the salary is good. Most likely she will even be able to save for the future. "I hope the team is good," thought the girl in the evening going to bed. "Mom, help me tomorrow." The next day, the Helen went to work. She quickly learned everything, and in a few hours she was entrusted to serve the first client. She took the order and brought all the food he ordered. A luxury car stopped near the restaurant. The doorman immediately rushed to open the door, and a tall, middle-aged man got out of the car. It was a regular customer of their restaurant. Helen noticed that the restaurant owner came out to greet this man. The woman grinned, eagerly catching his gaze. She bloomed before his eyes and exuded a feigned joy. "This is our regular customer Victor. A very rich man. Always leaves a generous tip. And a bachelor, too. Look at how our director is spinning around him. By the way, be careful with him. He is a sucker for young girls, and Marianne does not forgive this. Your predecessor paid with her job for flirting with him," said Kate, who also worked here as a waitress. Marianne motioned to Helen and went to the office. Helen went to take the order. She said hello and put the menu on the table. Victor couldn't believe his eyes. Helen's face and figure reminded him of a woman who had caused him a lot of pain in his youth. The bride left him a week before the wedding. All she said was that she didn't love him and had met someone else. The man could not recover from the shock for a long time. But he was saved by studies, work, and a new goal. Revenge. Become rich, so that the runaway bride understands what she gave up. As a law student, he threw himself into his studies, taking on countless side jobs. And by the end of his 5th year, he already had his own small real estate firm. Things went up a notch. It turned out that Victor has a great flair for profitable deals. All this made him a rich and successful man. Regarding relations with women, they were the only consumed. He didn't let any of them get close to him. His first love, he could not forgive and forget. And this new waitress was just a copy of her. And she will definitely end up in my bed, Victor thought. Hey, are you new? How do you like working here? How about I pick you up after work? We'll drive around the city, then have dinner in a cozy place. You'll love it. Helen was shocked by this offer. She had no experience with men yet, although she knew exactly how such a proposal would end. Suppressing a twinge of irritation, she replied politely as if nothing had happened. I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to do that. I am at the workplace and after work I will go home. Come on, pretty girl. The entire town knows me. You won't get anything for walking with me. I would say on the contrary, they are also encouraged. I will ask your director to give you a decent bonus, the man laughed merrily, looking impudently into Helen's eyes. Excuse me, are you going to order anything else? Helen ignored his suggestion. He shook his head, still smiling impudently. Hearing this, the girl turned away and went to the counter. The days dragged on. After the first acquaintance, Victor went to the restaurant more than once. Sometimes he came in the company of long-legged beauties, sometimes alone, sometimes with other men in suits. When he was alone, he always offered Helen a walk under the moon, a trip to Bali, a visit to a jewelry store, or immediately to his country house. In fact, Helen was very amused by all this. It turned into a kind of game. Victor offered various options, hoping that in the end Helen would agree. And she listened with a smile and still said that she was not interested. She already knew his story from her colleagues, and she felt a little sorry for him. Therefore, she wasn't angry at his advances and just did her job. It is not known how it would have ended if Marianne had not intervened. She always watched these flirtatious scenes. And being in love with Victor, his attention to the waitress did not like her more and more. She knew that Helen might give up at some point. She also saw that Victor was too warm to a simple waitress. Marianne decided to rid of Helen. A few days later, Helen came to work in the morning as usual. She met Marianne in the hall. She looked at Helen angrily and said, "Let's go to my place and tell me everything." There was an unpleasant conversation in the office. Helen, when I took you here to work, I believed that you really have a desperate situation. I believed you and took you on probation with no experience or seniority. And you stole from us instead of thanking us. Yesterday, we conducted an audit and revealed a shortfall in the cash register. We found most of the money in your locker. I didn't expect this from you. I won't go to the police. I don't feel sorry for you. But I don't want to ruin the restaurant's reputation. I don't want everyone to think that only thieves work here. Now get out of here, you're fired. The restaurant owner shouted. Helen burst into tears at the unexpected accusation. After all, it was not her fault, and she did not know about the money and the shortage. When she got home, she took out an old photo album with her mother's photos. She wanted to forget the complete nightmare that had happened to her. Suddenly, an envelope fell out of the photo album. It was addressed to Helen. Sweet Helen, if you're reading this letter, I'm probably no longer with you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. But now that you're alone, you need to know the truth. This will help you. When I was 19, I was young and stupid. Once, after a strong quarrel, I left my fiancé almost right before the wedding. I didn't know I was pregnant. And then I met Ivan, who raised you as his own daughter. He was a wonderful man, very fond of you and me, even though he knew that you were not his own daughter. You're an adult now, and you have a right to know the truth about your real father. His name is Victor. He's a well-known businessman in our city. I want you to know that you're not alone in this world. When you have difficulties or problems in your life, turn to your father. I hope he accepts you. And if that ever happens, ask him to apologize for me. I know I'm very sorry for him. But unfortunately, nothing can be fixed because it is impossible to turn back time. With trembling hands, Helen put the letter on the table and covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. What she had just learned shocked her. "Mom, why didn't you tell me before?" Helen whispered, looking at the photo of her parents. She didn't know what to do yet. She was ashamed that her own father had spent so much time hitting on her and treating her as a sexual object. She decided not to tell him the truth. And the next day she started looking for a job. For several days, she went to interviews but was rejected everywhere. Returning once again from such an interview, Helen noticed a familiar Jeep near the entrance. Victor got out of the car with a bouquet. "I've been to the restaurant, and I know you're in trouble. The way you did it wrong. But I can help you." And he smiled significantly. All the resentment and pain rose to Helen's throat. In a state of passion, she snatched the bouquet from Victor's hands and trampled on it. And then with tears in her eyes she shouted, "I stole nothing. I did nothing wrong to anyone. First my mother died, now my father wants to buy me." And rushed into the entrance. Speechless, the man stared at the closing door of the entrance and thought feverishly. After waiting at the bottom for 10 minutes and giving the girl and himself time to calm down, he went up to her floor and rang the doorbell. "What do you want?" He heard the voice of a sobbing Helen behind the door. "Are you Mary's daughter?" "Yes, I am her daughter. Yesterday I found a letter from my mother, in which she told the whole truth." "Open the door." A whole minute passed, and Victor thought that Helen would not open it. But suddenly Helen opened the door and stood aside to let him enter the room. "Don't drive me away, let's talk calmly." The girl silently handed him a letter from her mother. Victor immediately recognized the handwriting of the woman he had loved and hated all his life. After reading the letter, he said, "It's so hard to know that she's gone, that I'll never see her again. How many times in my dreams I have imagined our meeting and my triumph over it. And it all turned out like this. Helen, I'm sorry. Please don't reject me. Yes, you are a grown-up daughter, whom I do not know at all, whom I did not raise, and whom I have offended so many times with unpleasant hints, but I'll fix it now, I promise." Helen was silent. She didn't know what to say. And in her heart of hearts, she knew that this was her father, her own blood. He is not such a bad person, just battered by life and imbued with cynicism. Then she decided that she would do everything possible to become a father and daughter. It just takes time. "Let's go get some tea," the girl whispered, wiping away her tears.